At Arizona State University, we've made online education better, smarter, and more personalized so you can go further in your aspiring field.
I decided to pursue medicine once I realized that ASU did have the online program for biological sciences. You're still required to learn the same curriculum. You're still being tested on the same content that anyone would be tested on in person. The comprehensiveness of the program prepared me so well for medical school.
Explore over 300 programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
Lately, it feels like every day brings a new headline that says, we're one step closer to the end. The planet's overheating. The internet is a mess. There's war, violence, corruption, and more ways than ever to completely lose faith in humanity. Before you even finish your coffee and wake up good. It's easy to believe things are spiraling. They're worse off than we've ever been. But here's the funny thing about all this. What if we're not? What if instead of heading toward collapse, we've actually been climbing out of one? Because when you pull back just a little bit, look past the noise, look past the anger and the chaos, something strange starts to show up in the numbers. Less crime, longer lives, more people out of poverty, fewer children dying, cleaner air in places that used to choke on it. It doesn't feel like good news, but that's kind of the point. This episode isn't about the world ending. It's about how it quietly didn't, and the mystery of why nobody's talking about that. It's easy to think things have never been more broken, that this, right now, is the lowest point we've hit, ever. But the truth is, if you zoom out even just a little bit, you'll find that we've already lived through some absolute disasters. We just stopped talking about them. Let's rewind a few decades. Start with the air. In the 1970s, cities like Los Angeles and New York weren't just polluted, they were basically uninhabitable for people with lungs. The smog was so thick you couldn't see more than a few blocks ahead. It was like breathing in burnt toast and tailpipe for breakfast. Lead was still in gasoline. Pesticides were sprayed on everything, like cologne. Rivers in the U.S. literally caught on fire. Rivers, bodies of water, caught on fire. There's a river in Ohio that ignited so often, it basically became just a feature of the city. Hi, welcome to Cleveland. Have you seen our fire river? And now the subject that I've brought up multiple times on my 10-Minute Murder podcast, and there's a certain group of people that get angry every time I talk about it. It's crime stats and crime rates. The murder rate in the U.S., it peaked in the early 1990s. Carjackings seemed routine. Gang violence was on every news broadcast. Serial killers, they seemed like they were everywhere. If you weren't locking your doors in broad daylight, you probably hadn't seen enough after-school specials yet. So what I'm saying is, the crime rate has decreased since the 1990s. Crime has fallen, not risen. There aren't more murders than ever. There isn't more crime, violent crime happening across the U.S. than ever. Despite what your favorite politician may be trying to tell you, that's simply not true. And I'm not sure why that group of people get so angry when I try to tell them that things are safer now. People are safer than they were in the 90s. That's good, right? You would think that's a good thing, but it makes them mad. I'm not saying everywhere is safe, for the record. I'm saying things are safer, according to the statistics. Okay, let's move on. Let's talk more globally. In 1981, more than 40% of people on Earth lived in extreme poverty, less than $2 a day. Billions of people without clean water, reliable food, or health care. Whole generations were born and died without ever seeing a doctor. Child mortality was brutal. In 1990, over 12 million children under the age of 5 died that year alone. That's roughly the population of Ohio, with their fire river, gone every single year. And let's not forget about Cold War anxiety. We had full-on public drills for nuclear war. People were building bunkers in their backyard like it was a normal weekend project. If you grew up then, You probably thought your school desk could shield you from atomic fallout. It can't, in case you're wondering. So yeah, today has problems, but it's not the problem. Compared to where we were 30, 40, 50 years ago, we have made some serious progress. The scary part is we barely talk about it because we remember the music. We remember the fashion, the cars, not the air that made your chest hurt or the fact that a random Tuesday might involve ducking under your desk and praying the missiles didn't come. That's the weird thing about progress. When it works, it disappears. So here's the part that feels like a trick. While we were all arguing online, getting nostalgic for the good old days, which, let's be honest, weren't that good, something strange happened, quietly in the background. The world got better. Not perfect, not utopia, but measurably, undeniably better. On paper, in data, and in ways that, if you saw them in a movie, you'd call it unrealistic. Let's talk numbers for a second. In 1981, over 40% of the global population lived in extreme poverty. Today, that number is under 10%. That's not a rounding error. That's billions of people lifted out of survival mode. Child mortality, the number of kids who die before age 5, has dropped by more than half in the last 30 years. Vaccinations, clean water, access to healthcare, things we all take for granted have become available to people that used to go without it. Entire diseases are on the verge of disappearing. Lifespan is up almost everywhere. Most people can read, vote, unfortunately, get medical care, and live past 40 than in any other time in human history. Violent crime? In the U.S., it peaked in the early 90s, as I said before, dropped significantly since then. You probably wouldn't guess that if you watch cable news or listen to politicians, but it's true. Murder rates in major cities are still lower now than they were back when everyone was wearing acid-washed jeans. Hopefully that's a coincidence. And remember that air pollution I mentioned at the beginning? The Clean Air Act and similar regulations didn't just slap a sticker on the problem, they actually worked. The air in cities like LA, once so smoggy it looked like someone smeared Vaseline on the skyline, is now way cleaner. Still not mountain fresh, but people aren't coughing their way to the grocery store anymore. Even war has declined. Statistically speaking, we live in one of the least violent eras in recorded history. Conflicts still obviously exist, of course, but fewer people are dying in them than in the massive wars of the 20th century. We've also made real progress in LGBTQ+ rights, racial equality, and gender representation. Again, far from solved, not done, but forward momentum that would have been unthinkable to previous generations. You can get married, raise a kid, and run for office in ways that were impossible just a few decades ago. And look, I get it. That all sounds like something you'd hear at a TED Talk given by a guy in sneakers who claps too much. But this isn't optimism for the sake of it. This is data. This is real. The catch, most of us didn't notice. Because good news doesn't scream in your face, it just becomes the norm, and we move on. Progress isn't a trendy subject. There aren't documentaries on Netflix called "Nobody Died in My Neighborhood." People care more about the negative than they do the positive. So yeah, things are still hard, very hard for a lot of people, but they've also been harder, way harder. And the fact that we don't talk about how far we've come, that's part of the mystery too. Okay, so let's say you're with me so far. The world, by the numbers, has improved in a lot of ways. Fewer people are dying, more people are surviving, and the air doesn't immediately try to kill you. But that's not what it feels like, right? It still feels tense. It feels kind of insane right now, scary and exhausting. This low-level anxiety humming in the background of everything, from your news feed to your dinner table, it's weird, right? So what gives? First, there's something called negativity bias. It's a built-in survival feature. Your brain is wired to spot threats more than it's wired to notice comfort. And that made sense evolution-wise. Early humans weren't gathering around the fire to celebrate one more day without a bear attack. They were scanning a tree line just in case one showed up. That instinct didn't disappear. It just got Wi-Fi. Now we scroll, we refresh, we absorb non-stop updates that tell us, in various ways, that everything's on fire. And even when it's not on fire, we're trained to expect the worst. The media, the news, social, politics, all of it knows this. Fear keeps you watching. Outrage keeps you engaged. That's not a conspiracy. That's just the algorithm doing what it was designed to do. Feed you everything that makes you click. And what makes us click? Conflict, danger, that one guy who ruined everything. The second part of this puzzle is how quiet good news is. Progress doesn't usually come with a headline. It comes in boring little wins, new policies, a vaccine, a drop in numbers, and it happens slowly. So slowly you don't notice because it's not urgent, it's not loud. Believe it or not, I went to college to learn how to do what I'm doing right now. Not podcasting, because that wasn't a thing back then, but mass communication. And I remember distinctly in a class, this whole subject of why don't news stations focus on good news? And there was a case study of a station decided we're going to only talk about the good news that's happening. Only good news. Well, Joe, I've never heard of that before. That's because it flopped. Nobody gave a damn about good news. They just want to hear what the negative things are going on in the world. So it doesn't work. And now we've got the internet. We know way more about what's going on in the whole world than we ever have before. 50 years ago, you knew what was going on in your city, maybe your country. Now you've got a front row seat to every war, every fire, every protest, every disaster on earth in real time with commentary. That kind of access makes everything feel closer and more consistent, even when it isn't. So yeah, things are better, but they don't feel better because you're not supposed to feel better. The systems we live in aren't built to calm you down. They're built to keep you watching. So here we are. The world didn't end. It didn't explode or collapse or fall into some irreversible spiral. It got quieter, safer, healthier, bit by bit. And somehow, that's not the story we tell. We still wake up feeling like everything's slipping, that things used to be better, simpler, safer. But the truth is, we're comparing feelings to facts, nostalgia to data, and those things don't weigh the same. The real mystery here isn't whether the world is ending. It's how we lived through something that looked like collapse and kept moving forward anyway. Maybe that's not an apocalypse. Maybe that's survival. And maybe if we actually paid attention to the good as much as the bad, we'd realize we're not in the end times. We're in the middle of something worth finishing. Thanks for listening to 10-Minute Mystery. I'm Joe, the host, and thanks for sticking with me. Kind of a different mystery for today's episode, more meta than anything else. But I promise the next one's going to be aliens or lizard people or something strange like that it'll get you right back on the track of the traditional mysteries that we talk about here. Maybe a missing person. That would be a cool one. If you enjoyed today's episode, please hit subscribe and tell your friends and family about 10-Minute Mystery. If you're into the brief and the bingeable aspect of this podcast, let me let you know about another one of my podcasts. It's called 10-Minute Murder. And you can find that any place you can find this one. Again, thank you so much for listening to 10-Minute Mystery.